Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, Bed of the Dead. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with four hooded men dragging a criminal to a tree, which acts as a hanging post for convicts and crooks. The hooded men replace the rotten corpse with the terrified criminal and stab him to death. Days later, a carpenter chops down the same tree, carves it into a tree emblem, then decorates it as a centerpiece of a king-size bed frame. In current times, the bed is named 1910 Van Meeker. On the other side, firefighters, the police, and the medical team surround an exotic club after a fire broke out in room 18. A detective of the investigation team arrives tipsy at the club. Despite being intoxicated and coughing, he fights it with medicine. He intakes his medicine in his car, checks his appearance on the car's sun visor, then stares at his daughter's photograph. On his way to the club, the medic tells him that they discover 5 bodies. Inside the club, he sees his partner talking with the receptionist of the club. The partner updates detective on his findings, showing the surveillance footage containing the last time the victims in room 18 are seen. The partner proceeds to read the record book, tracking the list of customers checking into the club, but detective suddenly grabs it from him. Detective then reads a name, Doug, the person who last booked room 18 3 months ago. The partner shares that Doug's wife is in prison for gouging out Doug's eyeballs. He adds someone committed suicide in the same room last year. The main problem is they're unsure why the 4 victims never signed their names in the record book for room 18. So to unravel the crippling mystery, detective orders his partner to background check all the victims of room 18. From the surveillance footage recorded 2 hours ago, everything transcends to the time when the 4 friends were still alive. It was late at night, and the 4 friends were waiting to get their room, when suddenly, the receptionist in the registration said there were no rooms available. Fred, who was talking with the receptionist, asked Ren to do the talking. Ren reminded the receptionist that there was a room with a king-size bed, but she said it was not available. Desperate to keep the show going for his birthday, Ren bribed the receptionist with more money to acquire the room. After Ren's successful transaction, the 4 friends walked to their room and entered the filthy and stale room 18, where each furniture was covered with blankets. Ren found a dusty piano and an explicit video for viewing option on the television, while Fred unveiled the Van Meeker bed in the room. After Nancy changed into an outfit in the bathroom, everyone gathered on the bed with liquors on hand. Nancy and Sandy were about to kiss as requested by Ren, when suddenly Nancy saw a creepy old woman replace Sandy's face. Nancy staggered backward, shocking everyone with the turn of events. Things became grim, and the 2 women lost interest in playing the game, so they decided to sleep, leaving Fred and Red disappointed. Back in the present, detective investigates the crime scene in room 18. The captain humorously welcomes detective back from hiatus. According to the captain, a gas leak triggered by a lit cigarette caused the fire. Detective then approaches Nancy's body on the floor, and the captain relays to him that she had shattered bones, but with no evidence of bruises on the body. Scattered on the floor are the room key and charred Van Meeker bed. The captain says they discovered 2 more bodies under the bed, and one of the burned skeletons has a ring on its finger. Things transcend to the past when the 4 friends were still alive. Fred woke up to the sight of his dead dog entering the room. He left the bed and approached the dog with pleasing eyes. However, Nancy woke up and saw nothing in front of Fred. Fred glanced at Nancy with a happy smile. However, when he turned to his dog, it was gone. A grumbling noise emerged under the bed, and suddenly bloody slashes appeared on Fred's legs. Unexpectedly, a strong force under the bed withdrew Fred, and Ren grabbed him, hoping to save his best friend. But blood splurged from Fred, allowing the darkness to swallow him completely. Seconds later, Fred's blood spilled onto the carpet. Ren checked and called Fred under the bed, but there was only a child's voice echoing Fred's name. Ren stopped everyone from leaving the bed, for something ominous was lurking. They couldn't reach their charging phone across the room, so Ren and Nancy shouted for help, but no one could hear them. Sandy threw the alcohol bottle at the window, but everyone was shocked to see the bottle rewound and returned into place, as if nothing had happened. Back in the present, Detective and his partner watched the forensic team remove Ren's charred skeleton from the ceiling. They learned that Ren was 25 and charged with DUI a couple of times during his teenage years, to the point that he lost his driver's license at 18. After a year of losing his driver's license, Ren drove and accidentally hit a 5-year-old child while drunk. Unfortunately, Ren died not from the fire, but from disembowelment, whose cause is still unknown. Meanwhile, the receptionist's boyfriend, the real club owner, barges into the crime scene, demanding her to let someone book room 18. Police officers surround the club owner and cuff him for trespassing the police activity. After the commotion, Detective returns to room 18 and covers Ren's fingerprint on the ceiling pipes with powder. He ponders that if Ren was not running away from fire, then what? Things switch back to the past, when the only ones left were Sandy, Nancy, and Ren. Out of ideas, Sandy threw the key on the floor to let it slide through the door gap, hoping and waiting for someone from outside to open the door for them. Minutes passed. Ren shared that Fred's like a brother to him, when Nancy suddenly freaked out because they didn't know what to do. So Ren sarcastically suggested pretending to care about Fred's death. Unexpectedly, Ren froze as a bloody monster erected from the bed and panicked about everyone's disappearance. He could only see the monster alone, so he escaped from it by dangling one of the ceiling pipes and swinging away from the bed. However, the bloody monster hung upside down in the ceiling and cornered him. Ren finally saw and heard the two girls, telling him to return to bed. However, it's too late, for the monster already entered his body and made his stomach burst, causing a bloody rain to pour onto the two girls. Back in the present, Detective interrogates the cuffed owner about the identity of the victims, but the owner himself doesn't know them. Detective then sees the actual photo of the bed, looking gigantic. Afterward, he receives a phone call from his partner, saying they identified the fifth victim in the hallway. The fifth victim was Alan, with sexual assault charges from a young woman. However, after learning the court appealed not guilty to Alan, the desperate woman hung herself. Things flash back to the past, when the only ones left were Sandy and Nancy. Sandy stopped Nancy from staring at Ren's corpse in the ceiling pipes and recommended she be apathetic in their situation. They washed their faces with liquor and drank it afterward. Outside, Alan from earlier opened the door. Nancy and Sandy asked him to call the police, but Alan touched the bed, causing him to hallucinate the two women luring and enticing him sexually when they were only staring at him. He was about to join them on the bed, but he felt Fred's gooey blood on the carpet. Suddenly, everyone disappeared from his eyes, and he felt a force strangling him. He ran outside the room and fell on the floor. A hideous female monster crawled towards him and broke his chick neck completely. Sandy and Nancy witnessed Alan's gruesome death. The door closed by itself, and the two questioned the unexplainable events in room 18. Nancy then remembered and shared a story about a man who never wanted to leave his house because he feared the devil ought to kill him. Everyone tried to convince him that he was fine, but he didn't believe them, so the man's wife drugged him to sleep and brought him to a psychiatric institution to convince him that he was okay. However, when the man in the ambulance arrived outside and the paramedics opened the door, an unexpected drunk driver collided with the ambulance, killing the man in an instant. Amidst their chat, Fred's phone on the floor chimed a notification, so Sandy used a blanket and a pillow to pull the phone towards them. After a couple of attempts, Nancy helped her balance on edge to pick up the phone. Sandy grabbed the phone and texted a message for help. The message was sent around 3:45 a.m., and the other phones in the room received the same text, including Detective's phone at the present time, which is around 5:43 a.m. The text message between Detective and Sandy simultaneously occurs, despite being in a different time. Apparently, the past and the present meet because of the bed in room 18. Detective replies who's the texter, and Sandy reveals her identity and current location. Detective's skeptical because he's in room 18 now, but he can't see Sandy. He then asks for proof, and Sandy from the past carved her name on the bedpost, and Detective in the present watches Sandy's name slowly appear on a wooden chunk. Detective covers the wooden chunk with powder and sticks a tape to copy the engraved name. He then hides the wood in a Ziploc bag and gives the tape with Sandy's name to his partner, who's eating in the hallway. Once alone, Detective listens from a music box in the hallway and imagines himself in an open field, watching his daughter approach him with a smile. However, the beautiful dream ends abruptly with the noise of a speeding car. Detective wakes up in the control room, crying and wanting to kill himself, but he calms himself by inhaling coke. Things flash back to the past, when Sandy and Nancy lay on the bed. Nancy, weakened by their situation, asked the purpose of their suffering in the room. She blinked for a moment and re-encountered the old woman, but in a hospital bed this time. Nancy bolted upright and admitted her crippling fear. Sandy embraced and comforted her that they would survive the place, despite the backlogging confusion on their minds. Later, Sandy from the past calls Detective, who's in the present. They talk with each other clearly, and Detective asks if Sandy can leave the room. Sandy explains to him that she's sane, and if they leave the haunted bed, they're going to die. While staring at the ring on a scarred skeleton, Detective asks if either of the two women owns a heart with a crown ring, and Sandy answers it's hers. Detective then relays to her that a fire is about to break out around 5 a.m., and they need to leave the bed. Sandy tries to ask if they're going to survive, but the call ends abruptly. After the call, Detective set a 50-minute timer on his phone to track the time of the fire. In the past, Sandy revealed she was included in the shootout in university. Her fiancé took the bullet that was initially aimed at her. She persistently blamed herself, believing it was her fault. Afterward, Sandy expected that Nancy would admit a mistake from the past, which could be a reason she was locked inside the room, and if everyone with the sin leaves the haunted bed, he'll die. However, Nancy claimed she is innocent. Suddenly, Nancy saw Sandy hooking up with Fred and Red on the television screen. Sandy convinced her it wasn't real, but Nancy didn't believe her and wanted to leave the bed. Sandy tried to grab her, but Nancy hit her in the face instead. Nancy apologized and still chose to leave, which left Sandy no choice but to strike Nancy on the head. Back in the present, Detective guards the club owner detained in the police car. The owner remembers from the article he read that Detective killed an innocent black man and accused him of being the gang member responsible for his daughter's death. Detective only listens when his partner approaches him to relay Sandy and Doug's information background. Sandy's fiancé died protecting her from a shootout. Meanwhile, Doug was a registered pedophile and charged with sexual assault, and when Doug's wife found out his sins, she killed him. The partner leaves Detective alone, and the club owner comments that the partner hates Detective. The club owner then asks if Detective was drunk when he shot the black man, which triggers Detective to punch him on the nose. Luckily, the captain stops Detective and orders him to go home. Before Detective enters his car, he tells his partner to save Sandy. In the past, Sandy held her engagement ring and was about to leave the bed when Nancy suddenly woke up from unconsciousness and realized why she must be in room 18. She remembered when her mother with cancer was comatose for a long time, to the point her family decided to pull the plug. However, her mother woke up one day feeling nothing but fine. Nancy was about to tell the doctor not to pull the plug, but she changed her mind midway because she remembered how she hated her mother for insulting her for being pregnant at 16. Across the room, Nancy saw her mother. Tears welled in her eyes, and despite Sandy's word not to go, Nancy approached her mother. But the moment she left the haunted bed and stepped on the floor, her bones became brittle, leading her to death. Back in the present, Detective visits Doug's wife in prison and interviews her about her experience in room 18. She explains she never killed her husband Doug, but only found him gouging his own eyes after taking a bathroom break. After everything Detective went through earlier, he believes her every word. From his phone, 40 minutes had passed from his timer, and Doug's wife comments that her husband was punished for the horrible crimes he did to a child. From the past, Sandy weekly wore her engagement ring. Across the room, she saw her fiancé, telling her to stay in bed and join him in the beyond. Sandy agreed and the ceiling pipes broke, releasing gas in the air. Ren's cigarette falls off his pocket, and a single light would cause the whole place to burst into flames. Detective in the present arrives on time at room 18 and immediately calls Sandy. He explains to her that she's innocent and nothing will happen to her if she leaves the bed. Sandy protests that she killed her fiancé, but Detective expounds that her fiancé died protecting her, and killing herself will hurt her loved ones, who want her to live fully. Sandy believes him and ends the call. She leaves the bed and exits the club at ease. The movie ends with the Van Meeger bed still intact in room 18. Detective believes he has solved the case, so he calls his partner. However, the partner is shocked to hear Detective's voice and initially thinks it's a prank. Detective says he's in room 18, but when the partner says he's in the same room, realization strikes Detective and he checks the wooden chunk in his jacket only to find it gone. He turns his back and sees the black man he killed. So Detective sits on the bed, imagines his daughter, and shoots himself in the head, knowing he needs to pay for his sin. Detective lies dead, just like what his partner sees in his time. Days later, the 1910 Van Meeger bed is on sale in an auction, and an elderly woman buys it for $14,000, despite its grimy past. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.